I'm David Solomanoff, president of the Internet Society of New York, and this is a follow-up to ongoing concern, interest of the Internet Society of New York, which is privacy, security, and software freedom as it relates to cloud computing. And we had Michiel give a talk about a little over a year ago about the Unhosted project, and we wanted to kind of have a follow-up to that, see how that's coming along. And Michiel invited Ben to come and talk about the FirefoxOS. Ben is with Mozilla, and that's a new operating system particularly focused on mobile devices and using HTML5, which is, addresses some of the concerns that we have as well. Okay, so Ben, would you like to begin with your presentation first? Does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can start off, and then it'll kind of tie in with what Michiel is going to be talking about in a bit.
Okay, great.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Ben. I'm a contributor and employee over at Mozilla, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about FirefoxOS today. Let me see. I think I can actually give you some slides. Okay. There we go. This is just a brief introduction. It's me. I'm a system administrator for Mozilla. I'm based out of Portland, Oregon. But like Michiel, I travel around. I spread the good word about all the work that we've been doing. So what is FirefoxOS? It's a new mobile operating system designed to hopefully supersede some of the things that we're seeing from Apple and Google and several other vendors out there. It's based on Linux. It's got Linux underneath it. It's completely open source, and it's meant for more mobile devices than, say, a desktop. So right now that means phones and tablets. The goals of this are different than the goals of just a standard mobile operating system. The first goal is that we want common languages on the platform. So they're languages that developers already know. So we have a built-in set of developers that already know all the technologies and the languages they need for creating applications. We want it to be a common platform so that you can write an application once and share those resources for that application on a number of platforms. So you can write a JavaScript library that can be used for a desktop app, it can be used for a mobile app, an embedded app, etc. And this kind of ties into what Michiel is going to be talking about a little later when he's talking about some of the libraries and some of the concepts with that. And lastly, we wanted it to be an extension of the open web. Back at the turn of the millennium, we saw this problem where IE was kind of the only browser, and we really needed to be able to target multiple systems, and that way developers aren't just targeting one system. They're not targeting one rendering engine like we're starting to see being recessed now. Many people are just targeting WebKit since that spans multiple browsers. But really the target should just be to run on everything, and that's one of the goals that we're working on here. So that not only will your applications run on FirefoxOS, but you're writing them to a common standard so that they're going to work on every device, on every rendering engine. The components for everything are just like you know and love with the web right now. It's all based on HTML5 for layout. It's got JavaScript for kind of interaction with all of the components, and it's got CSS for kind of designing the interface and theming everything. So some of the concepts are that everything you see is the web. And this is pretty important, and it's a little different than we've seen in the past. So there have been a lot of efforts to increase the web's visibility on things like just make, for instance, an application the web. But if you have that inside of some kind of weird container and you only have the web, it's not pervasive throughout the platform, then you're kind of limiting what you're able to do. So if you go look at a FirefoxOS device, you just look at the platform, everything you see is the web. The settings menu is the web. little notification bar is the web. The home screen is the web. Things like this. Everything you see, you can go on GitHub and just go check out the home screen, or the home screen that we provide actually is just one home screen. And it'll all be done in HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So you can easily just clone that, modify things as you see fit, make little changes, personalize it, that sort of thing. I also touched a little bit already on open standards. So all of the things that all of the JavaScript that you're going to write will run on everything. We're actually creating a new couple JavaScript functions to do things that JavaScript couldn't previously do. For example, now it can do things like, it has a permissions model, and in that permissions model you can do things like access battery life, you can access which Wi-Fi networks you're connected to, if you're connected to 3G, those sort of things that weren't really necessary with desktop JavaScript, but are if you're going to make applications on a mobile platform that are just as good as native applications that you see on other platforms. I also talked a little bit already about there's the concept of no single interface that's standard. You can have a home screen. Your carrier might decide that they want their own home screen, so you could have potentially a Verizon home screen if you buy a FirefoxOS from Verizon, for example. They're just as good. Our home screen doesn't have any escalated privileges. It can't do anything special that other interfaces that you or your company or your carrier might decide to do. I'll just skip over pre-existing dev community. I think I've talked about that already. Another concept that we really like and we think is missing from the ecosystem nowadays is the concept of multiple marketplaces. And we think this is important because it allows you to do things like your company could have its own marketplace. So if you're going to distribute these devices to employees, they can have their own, you can have your own app store or your own marketplace, and you can provide the internal applications, the web apps that allow your employees to use internal resources. And you don't need to worry about getting that accepted into the Android marketplace or the Apple App Store. You can just run your own app store. Additionally, if you think you're creating enough value, there's nothing that says you can't try to be the best marketplace there is and start accepting premium applications. You can even set up a payment model, things like that. That's not to say that Mozilla doesn't have their own marketplace that does already have some of these premium applications in it. And we base that on addons.mozilla.org. We've kind of turned that into the Firefox marketplace, so you can go find a lot of interesting applications there. And lastly, we're trying to make this so that there's no walled garden through things like multiple marketplaces, through things like the no standard interface, so that and you can just load apps up on your own. You don't even need a marketplace. So there's nothing restricting what you can do with the device. We like to think that the only people we are beholden to are you as the users, and we don't have to bend to the will of carriers for things like disabling tethering or installing applications from external sources, that sort of thing. I think that's about it with the design. In terms of devices, what we're looking at now, we just launched a lot of developer devices recently. We partnered with a company called GeeksPhone. They sell devices directly to consumers. These are the development devices now. There's two models. One is a mid-end model and one is a high-end model. And the interesting thing and the things we're targeting with this are emerging markets. So one of the things that we've discovered is that when you're running in these hyper-efficient browsers, you don't need as much hardware to run a full JVM as you need to run a full JVM. So we can get by with a better experience with less hardware. So if you look at the little device on the left, that's less than $100 phone, and that's one of the flagship models. It just really stands as a testimony to how well this works that we're able to do that. And with a device that is basically equivalent to 2008 and some of the first Android devices, yet giving a really fluid experience in a web browser or running these web applications. There's also, we're also pairing with a couple other carriers to get, and phone manufacturers to get devices out there. So Movistar, as you can see on the right, is one of the first devices. Actually, it's a ZTE phone on the Movistar network. And what was announced at Mobile World Congress this year is that 9 other vendors, including Sony, are planning on launching FirefoxOS devices in 2014. So the first devices should be rolled out in some emerging markets. I don't think we've announced them publicly yet. In the second quarter of this coming year, so only in about 3 months. And we're all really excited to see what the initial reaction for that is going to be. Additionally, beyond the things that, beyond the devices that we say and we say we can run FirefoxOS on, we can also run it on a bunch of not unsupported hardware, but community-supported hardware. And we can do this primarily because we're using the Android build system, just the underlying build system, to be able to get this on as many devices as possible. So anything that has an Android community port to it, we can move to FirefoxOS with just a small wrapper script. These 4 commands are all you really need to do to build Firefox OS for a device, and then you can go flashing it just like you would flash an Android phone. There's a community, one of the pictures here called XDA is the XDA Developers Forum, and they're the foremost authority on community hardware support, at least for Android and on most mobile devices. And there are, if you go look up a phone model you're interested in, say if you have a spare one and you'd like to try this out, you can go on the website and they have a specific forum for each device. You can just go look under there and find a Firefox OS build for your device, flash it, try it out, and see if you like it. Additionally, there was one done for the Raspberry Pi, which I think is pretty cool. So it means that if you just have a Raspberry Pi at home, you can go download a little Firefox OS build, flash it to an SD card, and load it up on this cool little 35 device that you're trying to find a use for still. And that's it for community hardware. The last point I want to touch on is the current state of where we're at with Firefox OS. We just shipped the version 1.0 Gold Master to all the phone manufacturers so they can do QA on everything and determine that everything is good, and they're ready to ship it on to the carriers, and then the carriers will do additional QA and make sure that they're within radio specs and they're ready to ship out on their networks. We've released the development devices. That was back in February, so we have the Geeks Phone devices, and you can just go online and buy one of those now. We're working on freezing version 1.0.1 to hopefully push out as an over-the-air update to all of our phones and all of the carriers to push out to the phones. And we're working with vendors to create Gold Master images for each phone model so that we can do QA here at Mozilla as well. One thing I forgot to mention is that all of these devices have a really cool over-the-air update system, which means that most of the components of the device can be updated without having to restart the phone. Usually all that happens is there's a bundle that gets pushed to the device, and it gets unzipped, copied into place, and then maybe a daemon or two are restarted, and then the interface sometimes flickers, sometimes it doesn't, and that's it. So we really like what we've done with kind of transparent reloading and transparent upgrading for devices, and we hope that everyone else will follow suit. And that's all I have to share with you today. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Okay, here we go. Questions?
Hey there, I'm Michael Carbone with Access Now, great presentation. I'm really interested to hear more about the over-the-air update. One of the problems with Android in terms of security is that there's this disincentive that wireless carriers have to actually provide the updates to users. And so you get the majority of Android phone users in the US, for instance, running phones that have known security vulnerabilities. And so I was just wondering, when you're talking about being able to push the over-the-air updates, are you saying that this is something that the wireless carriers still need to sign off on, or are you able to do this without their approval, or like how are you approaching this?
So as far as I understand it, this is actually something that we're being a little innovative on, in that you can select an upgrade channel, just like you can select an upgrade channel in desktop Firefox, and it will tell you the latest release available for your device. So you can be on the release upgrade channel, you can be on the beta or alpha upgrade channels. And some carriers at the end of the day are going to be able to say, we don't want you to be able to upgrade. We have to verify that all of this software works with the radio and doesn't interfere with FCC qualifications and that sort of thing. But for community builds and for some carriers, they are allowing us to do over-the-air updates straight from Mozilla.
Okay, so why don't we switch over to Michael now, and would you like to stay on the line, because there may be some other questions that pop up, as after that.
Okay, definitely. Thanks, guys. I'm going to no.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we still see you on the camel, not where you are. Right. Where are you located?
Okay.
Where are you now, by the way?
I'm in, I just arrived in Madrid.
Oh, okay.
And I'm at a McDonald's restaurant. Because I had to get to somewhere. I just got off the plane and had to find somewhere with Wi-Fi fast.
Okay. We're
Yep.
there, yes.
Okay, let me get started. So the reason when David asked me what the current status is with the unhosted project, I realized that the important thing you want to hear about is FirefoxOS, because it's much more important than anything I could tell you for what we're trying to achieve, which is, I think, in a nutshell, we had the Microsoft monopoly, and that was considered solved by Linux, and you can now have Linux on your desktop. And so at some point, people were starting to say that software freedom, at least for desktop computing and also for server computing, was a solved problem. It was a problem we had, and then it was solved. But I think it's now proven that it's not a solved problem at all. And now the battle is, for instance, mainly on mobile devices. We need a free mobile OS like FirefoxOS. So I think FirefoxOS is where the important software freedom battle is happening at the moment. So what I wanted to tell you a little bit, mainly what we've been doing in the Unhosted project this year, but I wanted to frame it as how this is a different interpretation of what World Wide Web means, and that's what we I come up like in. I think it's from Star Trek. It's life, Jim, but not as we know it. So I thought it's the web, Tim, but not as we know it. So the web started as a web of documents, where you could host documents on your website, and then other people could see them, and these were interlinked with each other. And then soon people started to realize that they needed a way to submit forms, like if you want to leave a message. And then that turned into websites that had a lot of server-side code running and could dynamically generate these web pages instead of just serving them one by one. And by then we could have user-generated content on websites, and that's what we started calling. Wrong one. That's what we started calling Web 2.0, where there is a website hosted by some a person who owns the organization that owns the domain name that the website's on, but the content on there is not primarily generated by that organization. It's user-generated content. So this is what we now call cloud, or one of the things that we now call cloud. There are many things called cloud, where there is software in the generic sense. The software we are using is hosted. So there's hosted software. There's software running on servers in the cloud with a user interface that is a web page. So the web page is a user interface for a software application. And that became clear when, for instance, webmail programs started presenting their. We got these Gmail and Microsoft Live sites that look exactly like just running Outlook application, which previously we had a separation between software, which is application which runs your desktop, and websites, which are things you browse to, but which is just content. So websites started to become software. And where the web is going in general, in the way Sir Tim Berners-Lee defines it, is and linked data. And so this is where the interface to the software and the data that's hosted on a server is not necessarily an HTML page, but can be a machine-readable API. So this is obviously very powerful because the web then, the web of documents is already a sort of big encyclopedia, but if you have a web of data, then it really becomes sort of a big brain where a server could crawl data in a semantic way. And that is the classical definition of the web. And I think that now, mainly with FirefoxOS, but also in general, there's a trend. We already saw it with Chromebook as well, and obviously the unhosted web apps that we're working on, where the web is a software platform with client-side software. So software freedom is what a lot of us are here for. Software is so important to people and to society that we cannot let it be owned by a commercial company. It has to be freely available, just like highways are freely available and they're not owned by companies. There are some. I think the beach should also be should always be public. You sometimes see like resorts that develop and where the hotel is, you cannot go on the beach. I think that's bad. I think the beach should be for everyone. And software, the same thing. And with software, it's especially possible because once it's been developed, you can copy it. So the software freedom is, we mainly think of it like things like Linux and MySQL and Firefox as an application, and OpenOffice, LibreOffice. But now that browsers have become so much more powerful, we can think of unhosted web apps, which are applications that run in JavaScript in the browser as software. So that's where I think the web is becoming a software platform, an application platform. Now, usually when we say platform, we mean a sort of conglomerate of components that work together in a way that usually locks out the competition. That when you say platform, you're almost already saying monopoly lock-in if this platform is proprietary. So we've seen that, of course, with Microsoft, where they owned Windows and Office, and also the OEM, the hardware production, was controlled heavily by Microsoft, whereas if you want to do anything in consumer computing, you'd have to go through Microsoft. And luckily, that's been sort of opened up again now. But we have new situations where Apple has become a platform. It used to be just a hardware manufacturer, but now you have, once you have, first of all, once you start using iOS devices like iPhone and iPad, you're not only buying the device, you're buying the whole platform. So the applications that are developed for it can only get on there through Apple. So that's a very important point, which is, I think, people are angry about it, but I think it cannot be underestimated. We are used to PCs being general purpose computers. So in computer science class, they teach you about the Turing machine, Turing completeness, a computer that can do anything, a universal computer. And you want your computer to be general purpose because then you can do anything with it. You have the freedom to run the software you want on the hardware you want. But through the App Store, a computer is no longer a general purpose computer. You can only you can only install the software that comes with the platform. And some people told me in a reaction saying, yeah, but it's different because it's a phone and you expect it to only have the apps that come with the phone. But as phones become more important, and Apple is also doing this more and more on MacBook Air, for instance, they become more closed down in the applications you can run. We stop thinking of consumer computers as general computers that can run anything. They're just endpoint. They're just the the physical endpoints that come with the platform. And on top of that, with iCloud, which is still new and being developed, users already have their music from the iTunes store, but with iCloud, you also have your address book and your data, and the platform's been made easy so that an app can store data on the user's iCloud account, and that way it's the user's data is locked into the Apple platform. So obviously Apple does this on purpose so that you keep using their products, but I think this gluing all these things together is very bad because it locks people into a platform. And you can say, well, you can use Android, but that brings us to another platform. Google started out as a search engine, and their main goal seems to be to have you logged into Google. When you use an Android phone, the first thing you do when you switch it on is connecting your Google account. And when you have a Chromebook, the first thing you do when you switch it on is connecting your Google account. Now, even when you install Chrome, even when you install Chromium, the open source derivative of Chrome, the first thing it tells you is connect your Google account to sync your bookmarks. And obviously, if it's just syncing your bookmarks, then that's quite harmless. But you can see where this is going. This is just the Google platform where people will end up saying, well, I'm on Apple or I'm on Google. And once you have invested all your data into it, it becomes hard to leave such a platform. The next device you will buy will again be from the same manufacturer. And we're back at the situation we had with Microsoft, where anything you want to do has to be on that platform. And then, of course, Facebook is it's a specific application, but a very powerful one and very successful. So, and it's been integrated into a lot of other things. A lot of companies realize that their marketing goes better if they do it via Facebook. So you see Facebook buttons everywhere, and even though Facebook doesn't produce any devices or any browser or phone software, they might in the future. If the point is, you can have your address book on Apple or on Google or on Facebook, and that's where your data is. Then you might have an account on multiple ones, but what we see is that the market for computing, for consumer computing, is being aligned along these platforms. So that's of course bad, because for consumer freedom of choice, which is better for the value of what we actually get as eventually get as a product. It's better if this is open, and we want to have cross-platform. We want to have a cross-platform way to develop software. We say, well, I'll develop the software once, and it will run on any platform. This vision was started already. How long ago would that be? Maybe 20 years. I don't know. I think 15 years. I don't know how long ago Java started, but Java was the vision of a cross-platform platform where through the Java virtual machine, you could write Java code once. It was compiled into bytecode, and then you could run it on any system. So it was obviously a very powerful vision, and I think a lot of things have been achieved with Java, but it's also been phased out again because it's running things in Java was often slow. And what we have seen in the last, maybe only the last 2 years, this became clear that there is a new Java, which is JavaScript is actually the Java that never was, or JavaScript is what Java wanted to be, the cross-platform platform. So previously, JavaScript was just a little scripting languages that let you create some dynamic elements in a web page. But now it's so powerful, it's become so powerful in the last few years, that you can actually write real software as JavaScript web pages. And you can see lots of demos. If you can look at their websites with, if you look at for HTML5 demos, you can see that you can do 3D things, you can do heavy calculations, you can do all sorts of stuff in JavaScript. And it's just like programming in C++ or in Java. You're just actually writing real software. You're not writing just a web page. So with this, because JavaScript is everywhere, every device can run JavaScript in a browser, and more and more platforms have adopted JavaScript also as their primary software platform. Language. So for instance, the GNOME shell you can write in JavaScript, and Windows 8 you can write in JavaScript. BlackBerry started saying, well, don't write any more BlackBerry apps, just write JavaScript apps. So that's very powerful. We now have a cross-platform software platform in which we can write applications. And when we do this, it's to get the picture of the architecture. As I said earlier, that in Web 2.0, the web where we submit user data into the web already became a software application, but a hosted one. So it running on a server. The application would run on server side in, we had the LAMP stack and Ruby on Rails and server side Java, where there's a server doing all the computing, and this is basically cloud computing. But with JavaScript, instead of serving up the user interface as a web page. You serve up the source code of the application as a web page. So there's the application that doesn't run on the server, it runs on the client. And the point where it goes over the wire is before running the application. So the source code goes over the wire instead of the user interface. And that is the powerful difference, because it means we can use our browser, which makes it so easy to use software, which is why cloud computing became so popular, because you don't have all the hassle of installing stuff and say, oh, I don't have that program. You just go to a web page and it always works as long as you have a browser. We still have that with JavaScript, but at the same time, the software is running on our own machine under our own control. So that is the idea that we try to promote with by trying to write unhosted web apps, and which is why it's so cool that we now have Firefox. We will soon have FirefoxOS as a phone platform, where you can run, where all the phone apps are JavaScript. So unhosted web apps are apps that where there is no server-side hosted code running. So there are applications that have JavaScript code which runs. It's dynamic. They're not a static website that doesn't move. But on the server, they are static content, because the source code of an application is always a static file. And so if you look at it from the client-server perspective, this is statics hosting. We're hosting static content. But if you look at it at what happens in your browser, it's a full-on application. So to be able to do that, we need something like FirefoxOS. And another thing, the thing we developed the main thing we developed is remote storage. Because when you run an application in the browser, you expect it to be able to use that from several devices, and the browser also doesn't let you access the file system as readily as an installed application. So local storage is very limited in how useful it can be to users. For instance, if you have an address book application, and it stores it. There is a local storage and IndexedDB and an application can store data in the browser inside a sandbox, but it wouldn't leave that sandbox. So we invented remote storage to be a simple standard for cloud storage, which can connect web apps cross-origin. And I talked about this a little bit last year. We got remoteStorage.io. The way it works is through four things. WebFinger, which is discovery. So you discover with your user at host identifier, you discover where the user storage is, and then with OAuth, you give the app access to a certain part of the storage. For instance, you give an app access to your address book or to your photos or to your calendar. And with cross-origin resource sharing, you can do cross-origin AJAX calls between the application and the storage, which runs on a different HTTP domain. And after that, it's just the REST interface with get, put, and delete, just like a file system. So this is we made it into an internet draft, so that people can comment on it if they want to. And this is our answer to iCloud, only that it's an open standard and it's made for the web, so it works in a browser. It's like iCloud only is part of the Apple platform. And if you look at, for instance, Dropbox, it's a desktop application. Remote storage works in the browser. It's a redirect from one web page to another, and it redirects back with the OAuth dance, and then it does AJAX calls from the browser. So it is cloud sync for unhosted web apps. And since then, we also started working on another thing, which we call sockethub. Sockethub is a small piece of software you run on a server because an unhosted web app can do AJAX calls, so it can do outgoing HTTP connection, but it cannot, for instance, send out emails because it's not allowed to open up a port 25 on TCP anywhere. So with sockethub, it's a very simple proxy that lets you tunnel out from your web environment using some credentials. The web app, the unhosted web app, connects with your sockethub instance or with a generic one where you have an account, and then just uses that as a tunnel to go out to other protocols like SMTP, XMPP, anything you might want to connect to, and also APIs. If you have, say you are yourself, you have your contacts on your remote storage account, but some of your friends are on Facebook. Facebook has an API, so your sockethub server can federate with Facebook. I was finished anyway. It was
Okay.
my last slide anyway.
Okay, so maybe, do we have some questions here? Yeah, okay.
I don't know if you have any questions or.
Right, we have a question for you.
Hi, I'm Denver. My question was, is there an XMPP client that one can run that uses sockethub
Hello.
to connect to an XMPP server?
Yes, it's in development. It's so sockethub has XMPP support in development, and there's Nick, who's running sockethub, is also doing a client app for it called Dog Talk, because it's like the dog food. We're still developing it, so it's not really usable in production. But we have had first real XMPP conversations from unhosted web apps.
Hey, Michiel, this is Michael Carbone from Access. I've got a question for you. I was wondering about what security considerations you guys have been exploring by relying on JavaScript. Are there different issues or ways that you've mitigated issues considering the current discussions or past discussions on the vulnerabilities of JavaScript in the browser? And for example, the way that Nadim with CryptoCat resolved that was by having a browser extension. So I was just wondering.
Yes, we started off with saying everything should be end-to-end encrypted, and then we said that that's too hard for us to solve. Especially we're not the people who can solve that. So once we let go of the encryption part, we have the security of OAuth, where so you have a web app, and there could be malicious code in the web app, but you could also mirror that app yourself, and then you know what code you're running. And the app will work the same way because it's just static content. And for the storage server, so remote storage server and sockethub servers, you have to completely trust those servers.
And because you communicate with remote
so
storage,
that
not through
data would be encrypted.
Okay.
Use the browser. But we said, well, if we don't do that, then if somebody wants to, they can still do it on top of our work. They can just add encryption. And we'll have enough work just getting the transport working. So, and it will already be useful if you have a server you trust for less sensitive data. So, yeah. So then the security considerations that we deal with are mainly about phishing in the or the OAuth spoofing, where people show you a fake OAuth screen where you think you're logging into your storage, but really you're logging into their server. So we don't deal so much with if you trust the JavaScript. If you trust the server that serves the JavaScript, then you need to trust that. And then if you don't trust it, you can host it on localhost so that you know exactly which code you're running. And
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
just trust your storage server.
Okay, any questions?
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Any other questions for Michael or for Ben? Are we kind of good?
Is Ben online as well?
Yeah, I believe he is, yeah.
I had one more question.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
So this is Denver from the Software Freedom Conservancy again, and my question was, maybe this is beyond the scope, but I was curious if you had considered using Persona from Mozilla for doing authentication, or is that kind of something that's a little orthogonal to this issue?
Yeah, we thought at first that it was very a good thing to integrate, and then later so we started doing that, and then once we were trying to do it, we worked out that it actually didn't make sense the way we were trying to do it, because the thing with an unhosted web app is because there is no server. There's no server-side session. You're not really logging into it. So that makes it different. So the way it is now is if you have your remote storage account, for instance, at 5apps, which is a company that offers remote storage accounts, then you have an unhosted web app and you say, connect to my storage. You put in your user at 5apps.com, and then you're redirected to 5apps, and there you log into 5apps with Persona. So Persona is on the storage server and not in the web app. So we thought it was very connected, but then we found out that it was actually orthogonal.
Okay, thanks. And I had one kind of follow-up question to that. I was just curious how you deal with having all of these various credentials for different sites with these unhosted apps, because I know usually if you're using like an Android app or something, it will just cache your credentials. And I noticed when I was browsing some of the unhosted example pages, there were these large forms that had like 10 different parameters to enter, for example, for accessing email. And I was wondering if there was some solution for caching those credentials, or some way making it so you don't have to enter as many. I'm thinking especially for mobile devices where you might not want to type in a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's. It's maybe confusing that I put those on the example page. We put them at the bottom now because they don't have CSS either. They're just code. They're more code snippets than actual example apps. I should probably call them snippets. So there's definitely there will be apps that are nice in that way, that you can just you have a nice settings page where you enter it once, and then it's stored on your remote storage. It will store those settings, and it will look nice, exactly like you chat app would expect a nice to look.
Sorry, so where would it store those? Are you just saying like a saved form in the browser, or I didn't quite catch that part that you were saying there?
on your remote storage account. So you have to. I think if my screen is working now, maybe I can show it.
Oh, I think
It says I'm offline. I'm sorry, I cannot demo. If I could try.
Okay, I'm not sure if we can see it, but I understand what you're saying. Basically, the login to the remote storage is kind of your main login,
You can't
and
see
then
it?
you can retrieve
Okay.
your credentials from there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, all your data is stored on your remote storage account.
Right,
So
including maybe credentials to other services you want
Fire,
to
yeah.
use.
Okay. This is Michael Carbone again from Access. I was very intrigued by your entry into the Tech
Hello.
Innovation Prize with Freedom Box and PageKite, and I was wondering if you were still pursuing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You still pursuing that at all?
We're still going to do that.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, definitely. If you heard the keynote at FOSDEM, Budale mentioned that he said he knows there are some people in the EU working on trying to start manufacturing Freedom Boxes. That was us he was talking about.
Oh, awesome.
We talked to the Freedom Box Foundation to become not a reseller, what would you call it? A distro? I don't know. To actually build Freedom Box. And then, so that brought up the whole issue about what would it mean to be a Freedom Box distro? So what does it mean to say Ubuntu is Linux, basically? So we're definitely, we're doing a lot of things. We're also doing the terms of service didn't read still. We've been active with that a lot. Reviewing terms of service of websites. And we're working with the Electronic Frontier Foundation on TOSBAC. But it's definitely, we're still working on that. Even though we didn't get the prize, we're still going to do it.
Yes, it wasn't my fault, I swear.
Oh no, don't worry. I didn't expect to get it. We're a bit off topic, I think, but we're those things and stuff. The only limit is time, and too many ideas and too little time.
Yeah.
But it has to be done, and so we're doing it.
Awesome. Thanks.
You don't mind? This is Denver again. My question is, I was curious if you
Hi.
have, say, a couple different nodes, and you want to mirror your data between them for fault tolerance. So, say one of your nodes goes down, and you would prefer to use remote storage from the other node. Is there kind of a way to synchronize your data between nodes so that you can pick either one when you connect?
We didn't build that into the protocol. You'd either have to do it at a lower level or at a higher level. So either your remote storage server automatically replicates to a backup server, and then you can even do a DNS failover. DNS round robin? No, you wouldn't. No, that would be stupid. But you could do a manual failover, which say, okay, I see my remote storage is down. I'll switch over to the backup server, or if it's down for 5 minutes, then you switch over. Or the other thing is, on a higher level, you could have an application that to extract a zip file of your data and have a backup that way, or just to read from one storage and write into another one with a user interface. But it's not something we built into the protocol because we wanted to keep it simple, and you can do it in other ways.
Okay.
But it's definitely a question we get. So you can do it, but you have to do it on a separate level.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks again, Michael. And Ben, are you still there? No, I think he's probably offline. Okay, thanks again. And this has been very helpful and
Thank
very
you.
informative. And we're looking forward to doing something more. Okay.